fall over here in Southern California, and it means different things wherever you live in California, honestly.
Yep.
My son works sometimes in Big Bear, and they already got a couple inches of snow. That was crazy last week. Here, where we are in the desert, it is just cooler weather. I love the cooler weather. I like fall.
I'm a summer girl.
So
I always have been, but
Yeah.
I do like the change.
Yes.
I do like the difference. Like my legs are
Me too.
appreciative of
Yes.
pants all of a sudden.
Jeans, sweaters, and I just like all the aspects. I feel like we serve such a good God that did give us a variety of seasons. We might not see it, like one of my best friends just went to Cape Cod and she said it is like so evident of the different seasons and colors and the trees and the leaves. But I still think it's neat just to have, boots and jeans and warm drinks,
Right.
hot chocolate, cider,
Chocolate,
tea. Speaking of, would you want, if I made you a hot chocolate or tea, for it just to be lukewarm? No.
No, thank you.
Nobody wants that. Nobody wants a lukewarm dinner, or if they ordered boneless buffalo wings at an appetizer, for it to come out and it just to be lukewarm. Nobody
It's been
wants
sitting on the counter for.
Yeah, nobody wants that type of coffee. I do not like using the microwave, and I don't even want to mention microwave in front of Wendy because they don't have a microwave. But if I have coffee and then half the coffee is warm, I'm irritated because I want it to be hot. So I do really need to invest in one of those hot plates. I just need that because
I hear you.
why not? So I've started pouring just half the cup of coffee so I don't have to microwave it, because I just don't think using the microwave is good. It's not good for anybody. But nobody likes anything lukewarm. So that's what we're talking about today. This is the second of our the second show in our series that are called Taboo Topics, and it's called Being Lukewarm. Now, if you are a seasoned Christian, this word will be like a normal word for you, but I just wonder, do you think about it? Like, do you think about, does your life look lukewarm? Do you think about, how could I prevent getting there? Do you think about, are you raising lukewarm children? Is your marriage lukewarm? So there's things that we're going to talk about that have to do with that today, but I could also see why God would call us not to be that. I really would. I don't think a lukewarm life is super effective. There might be seasons that we are feeling not the best. There would be things that we might go through. We might go a week or a month not picking up our Bible and not having the best type of prayer life. However, if you are going to live sanctified, if you are going to live the life that God calls you to, you can't stay there. And so that's what we want to talk about today. There are, I think, a lot of verses we could have used. I just have a couple and then a lot to say. But there is a lot on this topic, and you really do have to be careful for the type of life that you choose to live if you want to live effective. And so, what do you think when you think of lukewarm?
Well, I was going with the same idea of, my drink, my food, those kind of things. But if you think about your health,
oh yeah,
we ice a bruise or, sore muscles, we put a warm compress.
Yeah.
Not a lukewarm one.
Yeah.
Like we don't just grab a napkin off the table and put it on our arm.
No.
It doesn't do anything.
Right.
So I was thinking about, a cold drink is like invigorating.
Right. True.
It refreshes you. It gives you, kind of encouragement to keep going or something.
Right. Like if you're on a hike or something.
If you're on a hike or working in the backyard, or the heat is healing. We need to be that. There's healing to that.
Or how the ice bath became a big thing.
Ice bath.
But it's actually like good for your muscles. And
doing both. Like hop in the
shower.
ice bath, hop in the hot bath, hop in the ice bath, hop in the hot bath.
Yes.
There's not a lukewarm
solution for your muscles.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you can't do it. So that's kind of where I was like,
yeah.
Yeah, there's good healing properties to being hot.
And what do you need to make pasta? I just actually helped Sage with some homemade macaroni and cheese, but the water needed to be boiling. It wasn't going to let the noodles be the density that you want them to be if it was just going to be warm water.
Well, it would probably take days.
Right. Yeah. Right.
If you did that, yeah.
So in all aspects, God knows what he's talking about. So if you are new to our show, this is our show, Mama Bears on Purpose. My name is Laura Sheffield.
I'm Wendy Snow.
And we have these shows. This is a series that we started a couple weeks ago on taboo topics, but you can go back, and we encourage you to watch all of our shows, share all of our shows, see if any pertain to this season of your life, and then watch all of them. So they're on YouTube, they're on Spotify. Like, subscribe, and leave whatever you'd want to say in the comments, like if there's a show that you'd want us to do one on the future. And on Instagram, you can also find us, and you can message on Instagram as well, Mama Bears on Purpose. So we thank you for tuning in and being here with us today on our show, Being Lukewarm. Well, the first thing I also thought of was compromise. If you compromise on certain things, I think that is a clear indicator that you might be living your faith in a lukewarm way. So what do we mean by that? It's not standing up for values of what you would know is right. It's not staying quiet. It's staying quiet when you know that you should speak up. Now, I'm not saying to get in arguments. I'm not saying that if there is something that you know to be true, that you always have to say something. The Holy Spirit is going to give you wisdom in these situations. But if you are prompted to say something, and then there's a certain situation where it has to do with standing up for your faith, speaking the truth, standing up and saying what the Bible does say. That's why it's very important to not only know what the word says, but have it memorized, because yes, it is written on our hearts, but to have it on your tongue in certain situations. Like if you ever listen to the way that Charlie Kirk answers questions, especially questions about his faith and him being a Christian, it's not an answer of compromise.
Right.
Like you would never think that. You would know when he answers that it's an answer of conviction.
Right.
And so that is what I mean about knowing that you should speak up. God does not want you to live a life of compromise. So not all the time are we going to feel like we're on fire for the Lord, but we should live it. And it should be lived out in the choices that we make every single day. So living a life of compromise could actually just be like a trickle effect of being a little lazy about spiritual disciplines. It could be even just not investing in your marriages or certain friendships or whatever that looks like, deciding that you don't need to serve or go to church. All these things could make up of a life of compromise. And then too many of those after too long is, guess what? It pretty much could equal a lukewarm faith.
Right. Well, it's changing your habits.
Yeah.
You know, it's causing those habits to die down and die down and like it's just creating new habits. So I was thinking, like, anybody who chooses the middle ground isn't attractive to anybody.
Right. No.
Like, not doing the right thing and not doing the wrong thing, like,
yeah,
you're boring.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You're really boring. Nobody makes a movie about that person.
No.
Nobody says, hey, I remember them from high school.
Right.
Nobody. That it's not something that anybody will remember, good or bad, about you.
Right.
You have to pick a side. You just do.
Yes.
You have to pick a side. And so why not be on the Lord's side?
Right.
Be on the Lord's side and choose to be somebody that's remembered for doing good and being on his side.
And what would that compromise even look like? This is what I was thinking for our kids. It would look like it's okay to cuss. Everyone's cussing. It would look like this type of music is fine because I still go to church and there's worship music that I listen to also. Right. And this is such a sticky subject even with our kids, because many of them these days are just, unless you're in the Amish country, they're immersed in this culture. Yeah, and so we have a tough job as parents, but we can have constant conversations with our kids about the things that they're choosing. I've talked to my kids countless times about what are you choosing to let into your life. Mm-hmm. Like I can't even tell you that I've taken earbuds out. I've clicked on a phone. I've clicked on a computer. I've said like, why this song? Why this? Right. And I'm so proud of my oldest. He's 20 years old. He likes Forrest Frank. I don't know who listens to Forrest Frank, but he's not a super well-known like Christian worship artist, but he is Christian. And I'm excited that that's who he's sending me because of all these years of just like having conversations about not compromising. Mm-hmm. And like with what Wendy just said, like, what do you want to be known for? Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I think the music is big. I think cussing, because I'm sure Wendy knows, and so do I, like Christians who still cuss, or that it's so prevalent, like with these kids in this culture. And then missing church, like that it's not a big deal to miss church, that is a life of compromise. And then just even being impatient, like whether it's Christians or you're on the journey to wanting to know what it would look like to not be lukewarm and to be a Christian that would be living a disciplined life, like be careful. Because all of those things are living a life of compromise. Like whether you have road rage or you're just yelling at your kids thinking that you're in a hurry, like all of those things are really not showing that you have a love for the Lord in your heart.
Right.
So how do we avoid it? Like, how do we avoid being lukewarm? How do we avoid a life of compromise? I would say and hope that you could remember to do the mundane things well. Like Wendy just talked a minute ago that your life is boring. Mundane sounds boring. But guess what? Many spiritual, mundane things actually end up refining you and shaping you into the person that God made you to be. And it ends up looking like a beautiful life.
Right.
And so doing the mundane spiritual things well is actually a beautiful thing.
Yes.
And what do we mean by that is remembering to be in your word every day.
Yep.
And not just being in it, but studying it, writing down questions, talking to other Christians about questions you might have, looking up Christian podcast or a pastor, or did you listen on Sunday to the pastor? Well, maybe listen again and write down questions you might have. Other people that are amazing that you can listen to in your car, David Jeremiah, my gosh, why can't I think of?
Jack Hibbs.
Yeah, Jack Hibbs. Just great things to be putting in your mind and heart. And those are the type of things that would be seemingly mundane. You know, you're making dinner, but what type of music are you listening to? I do listen to news that's alternative. So sometimes I'll listen to that while I'm driving, like Dan Bongino or Sean Hannity. But I feel like that's not just me like putting it on in the house, because a lot of times in the house I do want to put on worship music, or sometimes, you know, a pastor that we love. But mundane could just seem honestly like that. Like it might not seem like you're growing or having deposits of God spiritually to be doing these things, but it is.
Yep.
And if you just keep doing it, it is so much easier to not fall into that life of compromise and that lukewarm faith.
Right. It's, what have we said before on the show? It's those 1,000 choices a day.
Yes.
And choosing to fork right or fork left with the best decision for that moment.
Yes.
And the spiritual disciplines are that, your prayer life. Are you meeting God every day? Are you setting aside a time? There's times when I need to just go off and pray in the middle of making dinner.
Yeah, right.
You know, but that's not my set
time to pray.
Counseling time with the Lord. Like, that is not my set appointment with him. My set appointment is first time in the morning, coffee, Bible, you know. That's the best way to do it.
Yeah.
Have your coffee with Jesus. And having that time soaking in his word, even just a little bit, and praying it back to him, all those things. And then honestly asking him to give you the grace to walk through the day making those 1,000 right steps.
Right.
So you have choices. So as we're going with this hot and cold thing, I was thinking, okay, so hot would be passion.
Yeah.
You know, having a passion for the Lord
and a fear of the Lord.
And just having that warmth of hospitality. Like, you can think of a lot of things that go with hot and cold that are good things. You invigorate other believers with your passion. Invigorating was like the cold, but the passion is the hot.
Yeah.
And they can go together. You can refresh, you can encourage, you can woo others to the Lord by being that passionate, that invigorating person. Anyways, those were some of my ideas of going that way.
And staying in those spiritual disciplines. So like Wendy just said, even if you are living that life of passion, if you are serving, if you are loving others well, if you are checking in on someone, and I'll tell this to anybody because I really try to do it myself, but checking in on someone with a text or a phone call or a gift or needing to do dinner because someone's going through something, guess what? You would pray and hope that would spur others to do it. That's what it looks like to stay in those spiritual disciplines. That's what it looks like with those 1,000 choices a day. Many of us will either be going through something hard in our life or just get really busy or really overwhelmed. So these mundane things / like spiritual disciplines, they kind of like get put on the back burner. But what your goal of a Christian should be, and to not be lukewarm, is that no matter what you're going through, those things don't get put on the back burner. And if they do, it might be for like a day, a week, maybe.
Right.
But that it's so integrated into your life
that it feels weird to not do it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what I've always told my kids. That's what we told the teenagers when they come over for Bible study. We would say, you wouldn't just not take a shower for 3 weeks. You wouldn't just not put on deodorant. You wouldn't just not brush your teeth. You would feel dirty. Mm-hmm. And so how do you stay and feel spiritually clean? By doing these things no matter what. Right. Like no matter how you're feeling. Because we've said it before and we'll say it again. Your feelings are not factual and you cannot go off of your feelings. We've been given feelings. God's given them to us. But we can't go off how we're feeling, whether we're going to be kind to our children or our husband, or sit outside and catch up with our husband with just whatever it is, coffee or how everyone's doing, because we're just totally exhausted. We can't not do those things. Right. And so it's the same with our spiritual walk, and it has to be integrated in every aspect of our life.
Mm-hmm. I was thinking also that we need to use the heat of the truth, the heat being another preserving thing.
Yeah.
How it kills bacteria when you cook. We need to use the heat of the word to ward off
yes,
untruths. So
oh my gosh, I love that.
We need to be using, like Laura said, if we're memorizing scripture, if we have it ready to go on our tongues, it's more ready. You are ready to ward off untruth wherever you find it.
Right.
So that's using the heat of the word as that bacteria killing.
Well, and that's
agent.
also refining you.
Yeah,
we did a whole show.
We
did a whole show about refining, but that's what it looks like when you're going to talk about it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I have a lot I could have read, but I knew Wendy was going to have some things too. So I have, I don't know why I put 28. I have Proverbs 8, but I'm just going to read a couple in Proverbs 8. I love the book of Proverbs. I usually read what the date is of Proverbs, because it's the wisdom book, but I'm doing 2 other Bible studies right now, so I haven't done that every day, but I still love Proverbs. So Proverbs 8 says, "Listen, for I have worthy things to say. I open up my lips and speak what is right." This is speaking about wisdom. This is what the Lord says about wisdom. "My mouth speaks what is true. My lips will detest wickedness." So if you have wisdom in your life, you're not going to be living the type of a lukewarm life that the enemy wants you to live. You're actually going to be doing right living. You're going to be making righteous choices. "All the words of my mouth are just. None of them is crooked or perverse. To the discerning of all of them, they are right. They are faultless to those who have knowledge. Choose my instruction instead of silver, knowledge rather than choice gold. For wisdom is more precious than rubies, and nothing you desire can compare to wisdom. To fear the Lord is to hate evil." This is verse 13. "I hate pride and arrogance, evil behavior and perverse speech." So God is not like loosey-loosey with his words. He says he hates evil behavior and perverse speech. Right. So don't you think if we were going to live a life that's obedient to him, it's okay that we live hating certain things? And that is going to be totally in line with how God would want us to live, and opposite of being lukewarm. "Counsel and sound judgment are mine." And then in 8:17, he says, "I love those who love me, and those who seek me find me. My fruit is better than fine gold. What I yield surpasses choice silver. I walk in the way of righteousness along the path of justice." So living in this and walking in it is going to yield the type of life that God would want you to live. The enemy would love nothing more than you to stay on a lukewarm path that would not attract other people to the faith. Luke 14, I'm not going to read all of that for the sake of time, but it's a super great passage. So it's Luke 14, 14 through 35. Okay. And so it says, hold on. "And you will be blessed. Although they cannot repay you, you will be repaid at the resurrection of righteousness." When one at the table heard him, they said to Jesus, Blessed is the man who will eat of the feast of kings. And then Jesus replied by saying, a certain man was preparing a great banquet and invited many guests. At the time of the banquet, he sent his servant to say, come, everything is now ready. But they all made up excuses. So the first part of this is Jesus saying that we're all invited, but guess what? We're all not going to come. I mean, we're all not going to be there. People that think that they might be invited to the banquet are actually not, because they have compromised so much. And so Jesus is saying later, he says, if anyone comes to me and does not hate his father and mother, his wife and children, his brothers and sisters, yet even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. I debated whether to read this verse, but I'm just going to anyway. Jesus is not saying we have to hate our family. He's saying we have to put God first.
Yes.
We have to put God first. And so once we do that, and once we make that a part of our mindset and our heart, then it's almost going to be impossible to live a lukewarm faith or a lukewarm life. And then Jesus says, after that, suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Oh, and he says, anyone who does not carry his cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. So I'm kind of going to sum up the next part. To be a disciple of Jesus, it's going to cost you, like, period. So if you are living a life that does not cost you anything, then guess what? It's a great check for you to think, maybe I am living a lukewarm life. Mm-hmm. But what would that cost you? Like, what would it? It might cost you for a time some relationships, because maybe there's some people that are like, you've changed. You're not how you were before. Mm-hmm. Well, you're like, I have changed. I'm living as a disciple for Jesus now. Maybe it would cost you, who knows, like a job, because you would be in trouble because you put a verse on your desk or whatever. Yeah. It's going to cost you. It's going to cost you daily, because you might not be invited certain places. It's going to cost you to follow Jesus. It's going to cost you to be his disciple, but it's worth it. And so if it doesn't cost you anything, then I would question whether your faith is lukewarm or not.
But Laura's talking about, you're going to go through tough things. So at the end of the Beatitudes, Jesus is saying, blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. And then God showed me right after that, Jesus says in Matthew 5:13, you are the salt of the earth. But if the salt loses its saltiness, it gets lukewarm.
Yeah.
It's bland. How can it be made salty again? It's no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled by men. Along with verse 14, you are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be lukewarm, hidden.
Right.
Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand and gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before men, that they may see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven. And this reminded me of a C.S. Lewis quote, which you might be familiar with. But he said, I believe it's in Mere Christianity. I can't remember. I'm sorry. But he says, I believe in Christianity as I believe that the sun has risen.
I've heard this one.
Not only because I see it, but because by it, I see everything else. So that's what we're supposed to do. Like with this being hot and cold stuff, like it is supposed to point people
to Jesus.
It's so by the sun, we see everything else.
Yeah.
So when you're hot, when you're cold, when you're bringing that invigorating, passionate flavor to the world, that zest, like Jesus says, be salt, be light.
Yeah.
Those are things that bring flavor to the world, that allow people to see more. You're giving them just this glimpse. And think about it, every time you take that next right step, it's illuminating something bigger for somebody else. It's showing a bigger part of God's world to somebody else. I can't remember, was it, Tangled, or I can't remember what movie it was, but somebody was taking a step and it was like lighting up. And if you can think of your life like that, like every good step I make toward the Lord, toward passion, toward his righteousness, his kingdom, is lighting things up around me. Yeah. Just a little bit. Like we're not Jesus.
No, but what does it look like when you come in a room?
It's lighting things up just a little bit because you chose joy, because you chose patience
Yeah.
in that moment. So that's where that went with me. Like, Jesus is talking about being lukewarm with
Right
salt
there.
and light, you know? Yeah.
No, it's so true. I love that. And it tied so well. How do we know if we are leaning towards a lukewarm lifestyle? So we thought of a couple of things just to almost end on, and one of them is complacency. So these are like check marks for your heart, check marks for your walk, your family, your relationships, your walk with God. But when things don't bother us that we should stand up for, or we just have like a complacent attitude, that could be an indication you're leaning towards a lukewarm lifestyle.
Right. Are you not doing something good?
Right.
Or are you choosing to do bad? Like, they're both
Right.
sin. It's both sin. So you have to make sure that you are choosing to take the right road.
Right. And
all
even
of
just
it.
as an example, like, I feel like there could be so many examples of this, but okay, so my son got married last year, so now he hasn't lived at home as of a year. So I'll just text him, like, if I haven't seen him, every couple of days, and just say like, hey, I love you, hope you have a great day. Or one of my close friends, he works for her, and so I know where his truck is. So I'll try to remember to drop off something. I haven't done it all the time, but like a little note or a snack, because I know where his truck is if she'll invite me over for lunch. And so I just think if I just thought, he's married, or this, or like, how often do not only children move out, but I feel like we've all heard people say, well, they live out there, or they this, like, where we have no excuse now when we have phones and texting and all these things. But a complacent attitude on my end would be not doing those things. Like, not checking in, not leaving that, not making plans. And then all your kids are still at home, but there's going to be a day that, like, it's going to be an effort to see them, or to even just send a text message. And so I think of those things. Like, we don't have to be so close with everybody, but gosh, like, we can have such a complacent attitude sometimes that's actually, like, it's not good, and it's not spiritual.
When God has put those people in front of your face.
Yes.
Like, you really don't have an excuse.
An excuse.
Like, especially, I was listening to somebody, I think it was Focus on the Family, and they were like, make a grid from your house that's like tic-tac-toe. You should know each of your neighbors at least in that grid.
Yes.
And try being part of their lives in some way. So that's choosing not to be complacent. Like, I'm going to know my neighbor.
Yeah. Right.
You know, I'm
I prayed years
gonna
ago,
take
like,
a thing of cookies, you know, that kind of thing.
I know, and let's hold each other accountable.
I know.
Because I've been wanting to do like some type of block thing, or potluck, something like that. But I do check in sometimes. There's a couple of them, but there's like 2 new ones that I don't know. I mean, one of my neighbors became one of my close friends, so there you go. And that was a neighbor, and I prayed for that when we moved into this neighborhood. So, but apathetic. I think the word apathetic is like kind of a strange word because we don't use it all the time. But I also think now that I'm putting it in your brain and I'm putting it in Wendy's brain, it's something we could really never strive for.
Yes.
Like, that is not a goal of ours, to have an apathetic attitude. And I was thinking of that recently because I just talked to a friend about how her son used to care more about school, and she couldn't put her finger on why. He had good grades before and now he doesn't. And she's just like, it's like he doesn't care where he did before. And so I think that can happen in a lot of settings. I think it can happen in making dinner for our family. Not choosing to do family get-togethers or game nights, or maybe everyone's getting a little older and busier and you don't see your extended family as much. You're not making a conscious decision to serve in church or serve in your family. You can just be like, it's apathy. And it's not a good thing. God does not want us to have an apathetic, I don't care attitude. And it's a little different than complacency, because complacency, you're just like, you kind of make yourself think like certain things that you're complacent about are actually okay.
I think complacency is less of an active not doing.
Right.
Like, you just it hasn't entered your thought space.
Right.
To think about. You're complacent about that because it hasn't. I think apathetic is like a serious, I really don't care about this anymore.
Right. Like, you can see and you can tell.
Yeah.
Like, I know different possible situations in marriages that have happened where it's not good, but there are indicators that had happened along the way, where stop doing date night, not going away with each other, those different things.
Right.
And so, so yeah, if you have an uncaring and it doesn't matter that much attitude, like, and especially when it has to do with like spiritual things, that's not a good thing. Apathy is not a good thing. And so also desensitized. I feel like you can really turn lukewarm in this culture like that, seriously. And I'm not kidding you. And that's why if you watch this, like, look at people around you and what shows people are addicted to and how many networks that you could subscribe to. Netflix, Disney Plus, like how many shows you can watch, the binge watching, the amount of violent movies that came out in the movie theater from September to October, horror movies,
Yes.
the amount of children that saw them, like, look around, ask your own family. I'm serious. Like, I work at a school right now and these kids are young that watch these scary movies and it is crazy. Like, I'm weird as the adult that don't know what these kids are talking about with these shows. Like, I'm weird. And so when you are desensitized, guess what? It numbs you to things of God.
Yeah, it does.
You aren't listening to a worship song the same. You're not. Your prayer life is not the same. There are certain things that are blocked, really, because God is like, why? Like, why was this okay with you to let this in your life? So you don't have that same reverence for God. You don't have that same craving for spiritual things because there's many aspects of your mind and heart and walk that are desensitized.
Yeah,
when you're
and
doing
it's
these
an
things.
actively not choosing him
Yes.
when you're choosing to just go along with.
Right.
Here's compromise again. Like, here it comes again. We're talking about compromising, which kind of leads to your desensitization of these things, and you're choosing these things instead of God. So you're choosing to take the fork in the road, and yeah, it's not going to lead you into a deeper faith. It's going to lead you toward the world.
I think of vulgar comedy.
Yes.
Like, I think there's so many aspects of being desensitized. Like, so many. Video games. There might be like Christian parents that don't know what their kids are playing, or maybe they don't know. Okay, here's an instance. So my aide right now was talking about someone in her family that they didn't know that one of the kids or cousins was playing Roblox and happened to be like in the room in Roblox. There was like something inappropriate going on. So it can just start young, where it's almost like the enemy has got in there in every aspect. So that's why as believers, we need to be praying about our homes, our children, what they see, if they go to somebody else's house, if they go to a family member's house, because guess what? It might take like one little thing for one of our kids, for our spouse, for who knows who that's in our family or that we have care over, to just not be standing as strong because of things they've let in their life.
Yep.
So what does this have to do with our heart? We don't want to just know that we don't want to be lukewarm, but how do we have a heart that would be reflective of God and Jesus in this culture, and knowing that we don't want this to be us? Well, it says in the Bible, in the last days, people's heart will grow cold. It says that many times in the Bible. So as believers, we have to do our part to prevent our heart every day from becoming cold. So guess what? That's the warm cold again.
We came back around to it.
We don't want to be lukewarm. We don't want to have a cold heart. We want to have a heart that's reflective of God's ways. And that is by doing these things that we have said. So we have to put on our armor. That's another thing we have to do, because guess what that shield of faith does? It protects our heart. And it protects our heart from things of this world that aren't going to be. Okay, I'm reading a Bible study book right now with a ladies' Bible study group I'm doing that's called Home. And I have loved this book in every aspect. But one thing that it emphasizes in almost every chapter is, do we have a heart that is a home for Jesus? Like, does he want to live there? And also, when he's cleaning out certain aspects of our heart, do we allow it?
Right.
And I think we can relate that so well to this, but also, do we have a heart that reflects God? Because we don't want disgusting homes. We want to have homes that are mopped and our dishes are done and that it's swept and that we have, and not a sticky and disgusting table. So we can relate that so well to, do we have the type of home that Jesus can live in? So we have to put on our armor, protect our heart from complacency, apathetic lifestyle, a desensitized lifestyle, not open doors like we've talked about before, not be backsliding, and we have to constantly be checking on our heart.
Yeah, and it's not only what you're doing within, but it's what you are putting back out. It's what you're putting back out into the world. Like I said, with Jesus telling us to be salt and light, are you being a preservative of the good things? Are you being a preservative of what is true, noble, right, pure, lovely? Are you preserving those things and trying to show off those things, making that your little bit of light that you stepped on for the day? That you're not just preserving, but also bringing flavor. Salt is flavor. Are you flavoring? There's one song, the Newsboys, Wherever We Go. And it's wherever we go, that's where the party's at. Do people think of you that way?
Yeah.
I know I have a hard time because I'm the serious one in the family. I can pull out a joke here and there, but I am much more serious. My mom is a jokester. My sister's a jokester. But I don't know. It's harder for me to bring that party. So that song is always in my head to, come on, Wendy, lighten up. This isn't, you don't have to, you don't have to bring the hammer down in every situation.
Right.
So I'm trying to work on joy. That was my word at your event the other night. I need to work on having joy. God, give me the grace to have the joy in this situation. But what are you, like, yes, you're working on this, but what is that pushing back out into the world? Are you being that heat of the truth? Are you being that cold, invigorating, refreshing word for somebody? Yeah. So there's a lot of things that we need to think about.
Yes. Well, I loved this show. I thought it was so good. So share it with somebody. Don't be lukewarm. Think about everything that we said, and we pray that this show has blessed you. Share it with somebody else, and tune in for our next show in this series, which is all talking about Romans 12:2. It's going to be so good. All right. Have a great rest of the day. Bye.
Okay, bye.